Okay, it's called the meeting to order. And do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do. We have a quorum.
Okay, very good. And we've posted the agenda.
Yes, we have confirmation of the posting with the city clerk.
Okay,
Of
is there
quorum.
any changes to the agenda, Jackie?
Yes, the one change I just want to make to the consent calendar is that Rancho Palos Verdes has paid their dues and assessment. Thank you very much.
Great. Yay.
Hey, good timing. Jim.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Next item looks like the consent calendar. Is there a
No,
motion?
no.
Oh,
Next
sorry.
item is comments from the public.
Sorry, you're right. Is there any comments from the public?
Colleen, not Colleen, Natalie, do we have any?
No comments from the public.
Okay,
Okay,
Very
very
good.
good.
all
All right.
right. Then now we're on the consent calendar.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So next item is the consent calendar. Any comments or is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, any further comments? Reverse roll call?
Any opposition to approving the consent calendar? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. So Jackie, what's the next item? Presentations?
Yes, and I actually don't think I see Dr. Prieto here at this point.
Okay,
So-
do we move to the next item or do we wait?
Well,
Hello, I'm here. Can you
Oh.
hear me?
Oh,
oh, your a phone number. Okay, great. Yes,
Yes, sorry.
okay.
I was having trouble connecting.
Okay, so this is Dr. Prieto with the Service Planning Area 8.
Correct.
Take it away.
Thank
It's
you. Slide, unfortunately, I can't see, but I'll take it that you. So
Can
good
you
evening.
It's a little hard to hear her.
Yes, can you speak up?
Is this any better?
not much.
I feel like I'm screaming at you, so I apologize. That's not my intention.
It
Okay, well,
doesn't
do-
sound like
Better?
screaming.
Do the
Yeah.
best you can, that's fine.
Good. I don't want to scream at you. So good evening. I wanted to provide you some updates focusing on the COVID-19 situation. So unfortunately, last week in LA County, we surpassed the grim milestone of losing more than 25,000 residents to COVID-19. Unfortunately, COVID-19 is one of the, currently it's surpassing stroke, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. In the face of persistent transmission in our country, several policies have been announced over the last several weeks with the goal of increasing community safety. So first of all, the state health officer order mandates vaccine verification for all healthcare workers in the state went into effect. And it is up to the employer to verify the vaccination status of workers. And for those that can't, they will require bi-weekly, twice a week testing. Also, the health officer order was modified to require masking at all outdoor mega events with more than 10,000 attendees, except while eating or drinking. This was already in effect. Finally, starting September 20th, the state health officer order requiring vaccine verification or a negative test in the past 72 hours at large indoor events of 1,000 or more participants went into effect. Self-attestation, by the way, will no longer be will be allowed as a mode of verifying that you have met this requirement. And just to note, places of worship are excluded from this verification requirement. And then some things about the third dose. We have seen that the federal officials announced changes to the vaccination strategies aimed at increasing the protection afforded to people by vaccines. With more data emerging that indicates that certain populations will need more support to be protected, the CDC recommended earlier this month a third dose of mRNA vaccine for immunocompromised people. Notice this is a very small group. It includes those that have transplant recipients, people with advanced or untreated HIV, people actively receiving cancer treatment, or those taking immunosuppressive medication. The third dose has been available to eligible individuals at vaccination sites across the county since Saturday, August 14th. Following the CDC announcement that booster doses of mRNA vaccines will be offered to all vaccinated individuals, DPH is working with staff and residents at skilled nursing facilities to prioritize the most vulnerable residents for booster doses. So we are prepared to administer that booster dose as soon as the FDA gives their approval. Just so that you know, the soonest a person should receive a booster dose is 8 months after the second dose. So what's the difference between a third dose and a booster dose? It's more than just language. So the third dose is meant to elicit an antibody response in those that had an inadequate response because they're so immunosuppressed. As opposed to a third dose, those are for most of us who had a good antibody level response, but it just waned because so much time has elapsed. And that's sort of what we do all the time. We give boosters for all vaccine or many vaccines. Our post-vaccination infection. So our primary priority continues to be vaccinating those that haven't been vaccinated, especially given the high rate of transmission and the ample evidence of the effectiveness of the vaccine. LA County data shows that COVID-19 rates among unvaccinated individuals was around 5 times, and hospitalization rate was 29 times the rate of fully vaccinated people in LA County on July 25th. So that just shows you what a huge protective effect. This slide shows that data for those fully protected by the vaccine to scale. So the large green box represents the 5.1 million residents that are fully vaccinated. The tiny purple box to the left corner of this box represents the 27,331 cases among fully vaccinated people.
I'm sorry, actually, does anyone else see her presentation?
No.
Oh,
No,
we don't see your presentation. Can you please share your screen? Thank you.
thank you, John.
Sorry, I don't have access to that. I thought Nancy was on sharing it.
Yeah,
Nancy, are
Patricia, you
on?
started before I was able to join. I'm sorry, but I did drop the presentation in the chat and it's being shared now.
We can see it now.
Great. And I'm on slide 3, Nancy, with the boxes in.
Slide 4,
So-
yeah.
Okay. So while this shows a 27% increase from last week, this is less than 1% of those vaccinated have become infected with COVID.
Doctor,
And of those who, yeah,
this is a very important slide. We're getting ready to I'm putting out a memo tomorrow that basically mandates vaccination. And this slide is really, really important. Is there any way we could get a copy of this presentation?
In the chat, Jim.
Hmm?
In the chat.
It's in the chat? Oh,
Yeah.
And
then-
Natalie can send it out.
Then totally ignore that question.
We'll send it out, Natalie.
Thank you.
great. I'm glad you're finding it very, very compelling because we think it is.
Mm.
So of those who tested, 742 were hospitalized, and that is a slight increase from the week before, which was 549. But this is such a small increase. It's from 0.01% to 0.014% for fully vaccinated people. Similarly, death in this group also increased from 55 deaths to 68, but it's still only 0.0011 to 0.0013. So very, very tiny. So these small increases reflect the reality that the vaccine does not protect 100%, but at the same time that the high rate of community transmission when we have more community transmission, fully vaccinated people are getting post-vaccination infection. However, at the same time, this same information also makes it clear how much protection vaccinated people have. Most fully vaccinated people do not get infected. Even more rare is for them to end up in the hospital, and then extremely, extremely rare for them to tragically lose their life to COVID. Next slide. And I want to talk a little bit now about school safety. I know there's a lot of concern with so many of the schools opening up, so we want to make sure that you are aware that public health is monitoring the schools that are in outbreak, whether it's among the staff or the students or both. And we have several teams working on the schools to ensure that the safety of the students and the staff is maintained. And we call our school technical assistant teams SAT. And they reach out to schools actually proactively before there's any cases, before there's an outbreak, to assess their preventative readiness and to also advise them on what options they have to improve. So for instance, a potential improvement already staggering the lunchtime, that could be one, how to increase the spacing in joint use areas, things like that. That's what our teams do. Our exposure management team follows up on cases reported by the schools and helps to identify what are some possible sources of infection as well as the close contacts. And at the same time, we make sure that the schools provide appropriate isolation guidance to anybody who is infected among the staff or students and their parents. And if more than one case is identified at a given school, one of our educational setting outbreak teams will work with the school to determine whether these cases are connected. If evidence of contagion at the school site emerges, the team will take over the investigation and help the school identify the steps they can take to reduce the risk to the broader school community. So to ensure that we are transparent with the school community, DPH will be launching a school dashboard on our website in September. This dashboard will include a district map shaded to provide district level information on testing volume, community cases, and community vaccination rates. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about our revamped vaccine website. I hope you'll all take the time to look at it because I think you're going to find it even more helpful. So we need to act again with a sense of urgency to reduce community transmission as quickly as possible. And so layering on public health protections is sensible while noting that the most effective tool we have at this time to slow the spread of the disease is the vaccine. So if you have any questions about the vaccine, want to get yourself or any family member vaccinated, I'd encourage you to visit our new revamped website at vaccinatelacounty.com. And you can also request a mobile vaccine site to visit a work site or some other large site through our website. So I'll take any questions.
Okay, Councilman Chen.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Prieto, for the report. Looking at your slides and especially on the one about schools and additional recommendation or mitigation, and knowing that we're in a very serious condition, I'm wondering, is within your community or the senior leadership in the County Department of Public Health have considered that we add another mitigation step during this pandemic, whereas any person who has been diagnosed with a positive COVID-19, in addition to quarantine, that the medical provider prescribe immediate prescription, something I'm just making things up, like whether it's azithromycin or other therapeutics that the doctor believes has more positive mitigation effects, as opposed to they go home and maybe on day 6 or 7, they get real bad. And then at that point, it's a very steep downhill condition that they eventually get to the ICU and maybe even die. I'm just thinking, you know, maybe this might be the time to start making some recommendations along those lines, if that makes sense.
Sure. I appreciate that feedback, and I will take that back. You know, we try to offer as much evidence-based recommendations as we can. We also obviously follow the CDC guidelines as well as the state. So yes, we can look at all of it.
Yeah, one of the reasons that triggered that is there's a, you know, I know someone who took a trip recently to Mexico, and unbeknownst to her, you know, she contracted COVID, and prior to flying back, and she found out she couldn't fly back, and she went to a doctor, and the doctor there immediately prescribed her a Z-Pack, and she said that was, and she had 2 doses of Moderna, just so you know. And then that was seemed like a different method, and that, you know, seems to at least help her get back, as well as prevent her from potentially a more severe decline that we see some of the statistics you show that gets to a point of, you know, ICU or, and worst case, death.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of these things have not been shown to be very helpful if there's no other disease, like if she had some other cause for having like pneumonia or a sinus infection or something like that. But just for pure COVID, a Z-Pack, chloroquine, hydrochloroquine, there's a lot of things that unfortunately we wish they would be helpful, because we want to offer as much help as we can. I think one promising area that has some potential is monoclonal antibodies as a potential thing to be given early on in the course. But again, I don't think most physicians have that available in their office. There's still data coming in. So I know our department is not ready to recommend it until we know for sure these other therapeutics are helpful. So, but we would love to be able to, you know, recommend anything that is going to be helpful.
Great. Yeah. I'm thinking more.
Know that.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the therapeutic that's been out there for at least, you know, over 50 years or so, that just so that, you know, you give the patient opportunity to also develop antibodies, they get over it. So this is to develop the big herd immunity. Just my
But again,
thoughts.
as the slides show, again, vaccination is going to be where the money is. It's been shown if you want to do anything to decrease your risk of serious illness and death. Vaccination is where it's at.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying in addition to supplement it. That's what I was getting at.
Right.
Councilmember,
I'll take that back to them.
Councilmember Valentine.
Yes, thank you. So can you explain again the difference between the 3rd shot and the booster shot? I think you started explaining it, but I wasn't clear what you meant.
Okay, so we recommend, or the CDC recommended, a 3rd dose for those that were really immunocompromised. That means they never really got a full response. Unlike you and me, we got a full response, okay? So that's where the people who need the 3rd dose. The rest of us need what's called the booster. That means our body starts to forget with time. You know how every 10 years you need a tetanus shot? The reason is because your body starts to forget every year a little bit more about to respond as quickly if they're exposed to that either bacteria or virus. So does that make sense, the difference now?
Well,
the 3rd dose is for those who never adequately responded.
So does that mean that the 3rd dose is more intense than the booster shot? I'm trying to think, what is the difference?
No, they're the same. The medication, the dose, everything is the same. but it's just who needs it and how soon. So those people who need the, who never responded well, they need it sort of basically almost as soon as possible. Whereas the rest of us who had a normal response, they're only seeing a decrease after around 8 months past the second dose. So to give it to you sooner would not do you any good if you had a good response to begin with. And that's the earliest that we see that it's starting to go down significantly is around 8 months.
Thank you.
So again, does that
Mayor
is that clear?
Yes.
Mayor Derringer.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Prieto, could you please describe what is going on with the health department? There was an email sent to me with a copy of a memo from Dr. Ferrer that dated 8/24/21, where and it appears that there's going to be forthcoming a recommendation that there be for all of LA County a full vaccination requirement for people who want to go to certain indoor spaces, which is be extensive. But could you please tell us what plans are for the health department regarding that and what it's based on?
Sure, again, and that's following the state health officer order that requires proof of vaccination. And we're seeing this more and more throughout the country, but specifically in LA County. For instance, it could be to attend an indoor event with more than 1,000 people. You're going to need to show that that you are adequately either vaccinated or you have a negative test. So, and it may go to other areas. Some of the cities have put that in place, you know, for if you want to go at a restaurant indoors. So I don't know where LA County will end up. You know, Dr. Ferrer works very closely with the Board of Supervisors to come up with what will be the local recommendation.
Okay, is this scheduled for a Board of Supervisors meeting regarding this, or is the health department planning on just issuing an order mandating full vaccination for all kinds of services, which I understand going to a restaurant to order takeout, going, sitting in a restaurant to eat a meal, having services like nail salons, hair salons, going to the gym? It appeared to be very extensive. So please tell us what the plans are.
So I don't know the specific plans. I can tell you it's not for takeout. It is when it's being considered. Now, I know that, again, Dr. Ferrer, I don't know, I'm not privy to all her conversations, but I know this has come up in conversations with the Board of Supervisors. And can follow up to see when if there will be time for public comment or how this, where in the Board of Supervisors agenda it is. Unfortunately, I don't know when is the next time they're going to be discussing this, but I know she is in talks all the time with them and make sure that we are in alignment with the state as well as the at least acknowledgement of the Board of Supervisors. So.
Dr. Prieto, this is Chair Boyles. I'm going to cut it off now. And any other questions that we have, by the way, Vice Chair Cruikshank, thank you for pinch hitting. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Just so you know, we won. We beat Bishop Montgomery. America got a touchdown, so it was a good day. Sorry I was late. But let's move on. If anyone has questions for Dr. Prieto, if you could get them to Jackie or Natalie, and then we will forward those to her and get the answers, and maybe we could distribute it to the entire chain that's here tonight. So the reason I'm moving us along is we've got a really packed agenda with a very important item up next. And we're a few minutes behind schedule right now. So I'm going to introduce Mayor Jim Butts, City of Inglewood, who's also a former chief of police, LAWA, an esteemed career with Santa Monica and LAWA. And Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, it's really a pleasure to be the moderator for a panel of very distinguished chiefs that we have with us. And so I'm going to get right into their bios and get right into the panel discussion. First, we have Cecil Rambo. He was sworn in as Chief of the Airport Police on November 6, 2019. Chief Rambo's retired from the LA County Sheriff's Department in 2014 at the rank of Assistant Sheriff. And that's the third highest rank in the Sheriff's Department. In his 33 years with the Sheriff's Department, he developed an expertise in areas including municipal patrol, emergency management, community partnerships, and employee union relations. As an assistant sheriff, his responsibilities included LA's metro rail and bus lines, and that experience will serve him well at the Los Angeles World Airports. Sorry about that. At the Los Angeles World as the Los Angeles World Airport builds an automated people mover train system, which will connect to Metro's regional rail system when it's completed in 2023. Chief Rambo has also served as city manager of the city of Compton from 2017 through 2019, and assistant city manager of the city of Carson from 2014 to 2017. In those positions, he's focused on budget discipline, relationships with internal and external stakeholders, and economic development. He received his bachelor's degree in sociology from Humboldt State University and his master's degree in organizational leadership from Woodbury University. Our second chief is Mike Seffel. He's born and raised in the South Bay, and he served as chief of police at the Gardena Police Department for the past 2 years. During the past 28 years, Chief Seffel has served in almost every role at the Gardena Police Department, from jailer to the chief. He was the first district commander in Gardena's district policing program. He served as patrol, detective, administrative, and special operations commander many times. Chief Seffel has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Cal State University, Long Beach, and a master's degree from Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. He's a graduate of the California Post Command College, class 47. I was class 11. How old am I? And a graduate of the Sherman Block Supervisory Leadership Institute, class 204. Seffel sits on various boards and commissions, and he's published articles on community policing and organizational trust. Finally, we have Redondo Chief of Police Keith Kaufman. He started his career with the Hawthorne Police Department in 1994 after completing the Orange County Sheriff's Academy, class number 115. He received the Medal of Valor in 1995 and again in 1996 while assigned as a patrol officer. Chief Kaufman worked a variety of assignments, including gangs, narcotics, training officer, and SWAT, where he remained for 10 years and made his way up to the rank of team commander. Chief Kaufman promoted through the ranks to captain in 2008. In 2011, the Hawthorne Police Department was looking for better ways to build trust in the community, and they started showing up unannounced at local coffee shops, McDonald's, Starbucks, or donut shops. Boo on donut shops. They would sit and talk with the community about whatever came up. No agenda, no barriers, no stress on not having the stress of a town hall type of meeting. They used coffee as a vehicle to open up the dialogue and start a conversation. They called it Coffee with a Cop. After being awarded a $400,000 grant to take the program across the United States, Coffee with a Cop is now in all 50 states, 15 different countries, spoken in 5 languages, and is arguably the most widely used and effective community policing program in the United States. After flying over the country, teaching hundreds of agencies how to do Coffee with a Cop, Keith left Hawthorne after 22 years, and he was hired as the chief of police in his hometown of Redondo Beach in 2015. Chief Kaufman has a BA degree from UCLA in Spanish, literature, and an MS degree from Cal State University, Dominguez Hills, in negotiation and conflict management. Keith is the past president, as of 2019, of the Los Angeles County Police Chiefs Association, and now serves as the Los Angeles County Region Representative to the Cal Chiefs Association. When he's not promoting community policing, he can be found spending time with his wife and 2 children, or somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. That's strange. Okay, so gentlemen, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so first question, and we'll start with Chief Seffel. How has the George Floyd event affected your operations and policies? Has the event affected community attitudes toward the police to any noticeable degree? If yes, could you give us examples?
Sure. So let me kind of go through a little prepared presentation that I've put together for this panel. But So globally, two ideas that came out of the George Floyd incident for us is that number one is no matter how well you think your agency is performing by connecting with your community, you can go deeper. We can go further in listening to our communities and try to address unmet needs. So in my community in Gardena specifically, I'm responsible for keeping the community safe as well as making them feel safe. And these are two completely different tasks. Making someone feel safe occurs through more frequent interaction and communication. And since 2007, we have used the district policing program as our flagship model of providing quality, customizable law enforcement services in Gardena. In essence, we created three distinct geographic districts and assigned a lieutenant in each to facilitate that specific community's needs. Surprisingly, we have come to find over the years that most of these concerns involve all types of issues that relate to other city departments, not just police. We found that those conversations about code enforcement or public works, community development, or record and human services have created a deeper relationship with members of our public. So basically, we become more than crime fighters, we become service providers. But even with all those meetings, events, and conversations, we can do more to address our community's concerns. And this involves a lot of listening, which we do at one of our 100 district police meetings that we have each year. It also involves educating on the other side of that, which we do at our community forums that we have throughout the year. The second idea, which dovetails out of that, is that we're committing to the idea of continual improvement in all areas. And what that means that we as a police department, myself, we must have a willingness to be open, not to be resistant or unwilling to change or to consider change. And we'll talk about some of the things we changed here in a minute.
Hey, Chief.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna have to cut you short because we're gonna have to limit to like 4 minutes per answer.
Perfect.
And these questions will give you a chance to talk about other things. Chief Rambo, if you don't remember the question, it was, how does the George Floyd event affected your operations and policies? Has the event affected attitudes towards your department to a noticeable degree? And if yes, could you give us examples?
Thank you guys for having me. So at the airport, we deal with a very large and diverse population that we call our community. So right after George Floyd, particularly initially, I think that we didn't see a really huge noticeable change in attitudes towards law enforcement at the airport. I think people intuitively realize the airport is a different environment. So our posture there, generally speaking, is also that of an ambassador. So our posture when we're interacting with people that are coming basically to the front door of Los Angeles County from all over the world has been more of a service provider, as Chief Safel mentioned, and we have officers that are more service oriented, providing direction, providing input, information, and also dealing with problems that like lost children. So it's not so much as the heavy duty street policing that you would see normally. Our posture is that of vigilance, making sure that the airport is secure. And I think people generally appreciate that safety environment. So George Floyd affected us very, very minimally in terms of how our officers are perceived. We have just a different behavior set with our customers. Some of the things that we did do though immediately, I implemented a no restraint on any type of upper body restraints, particularly the carotid chokehold. I immediately implemented a policy forbidding that. I did get a little pushback from the police union, Mayor, as you know, and you're familiar with, but they certainly understood why we had to implement that policy. And quite frankly, because I've been doing this a long time, in my 35 years of service, my comment to them was that I've seen it work effectively less than I've seen it work, in effect. So in other words, it's not as good a tool as people think it is, and it's caused far more damage than it has done in terms of officer safety positivities for us. So we implemented some policies that of de-escalation, tactical communication, and mandated reporting of where you see uses of force that really are outside the policy. And we also talk to the officers about making sure that if their partner is behaving perhaps inappropriately or losing their emotional intelligence, that they step in and really kind of settle that officer down. And the supervisors are also trained in that aspect.
Okay, thank you. Chief Kaufman, do you need to refresh the question, or are you ready to go? You're muted, buddy.
I'm ready to go, especially after that erroneous bio you got sent of 3 pages. Sorry about that. I have a shorter version. You got the wrong one.
I got the long one.
You got the long one. Apologize. Yes, much like Chief Rambo just stated, very similar reactions. We had very little changes to policy besides the banning of the carotid restraint, which we did. You know, the approach that really did affect us was more and better explanation of our current use of force policies and why they are the way they are. There's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about police use of force in the US. You always see the video, but you oftentimes never hear the statutes behind what is considered appropriate and what is not. And so we spent a lot of time here in Redondo Beach making sure that those policies were open. We have a transparency tab on our website so that people can see them and read them. That was very helpful. But one of the things that was most helpful was sitting down with our stakeholders and council people and going through the policy with them, letting them ask questions. What if this, what if that? And then actually we kind of refresh the FAT scenario, the scenario with the training and how those scenarios can change. It's basically a giant video screen. And we would go through those scenarios and then attach them to the policies. And it really helped our elected officials understand why they were written the way they were written. And we got a lot of use out of that. As far as attitudes towards our police officers, you know, I think we had the opposite effect of what many agencies across the country did. I think our trust levels went up. I think our attitudes towards police actually went up. I can say that with some confidence because we track it. We have digital surveying that goes out constantly to our community via social media. And we're always asking questions about trust and safety. And I even got a call from the CEO of the company, and he said, what are you guys doing out there? Because your numbers are going up. And I'm looking at our charts right now. In July of 2020 was the highest point in which the citizens of Redondo Beach trusted the police. So you would think 2 months post George Floyd, it would be the opposite, but it was not. And again, that's a testament to these relationships and openness. And but that's I think the way our department felt about it.
Okay, Chief, was your reference to the firearms training simulator when you said FAST?
Yes.
Okay, see, most of the people won't know that. Would you?
Yeah, I was trying to think what the acronym meant. Yeah, firearms training simulator. There you go. Essentially a big video game where the person that is interacting with the video, based on what they do, we can control the outcome of the scenario. So in other words, an erroneous approach or coming in and not de-escalating, we can affect the outcome. And we put all of our council people through that and just help them understand kind of what we were up against, but also why the policies were written the way they're written.
Thank you, Chief. We'll go back to Chief Rambo. So this is a question I have very strong feelings on, as Drew Boyles knows. Do you feel that arrest and or charging decisions are impacted by the race of a potential defendant? And if so, what do you do to remove that disparity in those arrest decisions?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I can tell you though, as a person who's grown up in the community, as you guys know, I grew up in South Central and in Compton as just a regular citizen, and then later on policed these areas. And I can tell you that I have seen, because of the diversity of the size of the areas that I've worked in my past career, that persons of color tend to get overcharged. District attorneys will have them cut a plea deal and cop to some charges that perhaps would really end this person's ability to work or get gainful employment in the future, or really stifle them in the future in terms of education and further in their life, particularly at a young age. So one of the things I did, particularly in the inner city areas that I work, is we work on intervention prevention programs. We also work with our officers to make sure that they have good relationships with these young folks out there that they're addressing, as well as having interactions with formerly incarcerated folks that really can talk to factual instances of how these things happen and how it really affected their lives, and then getting the officers to understand what it really means and how we can really try to prevent these overcharging scenarios from happening.
Okay, thank you. Chief Satel.
Yeah, thank you for that question as well. So from our side, from the PD side, obviously it has to do with supervision and then auditing the arrest that occurs and making sure that it's based in probable cause. One of the things we do at Gardena is to make sure that our supervisors are heavily involved, making sure that the arrest is valid, it is verified prior to bringing that person to jail. So that's how we handle it on the PD side.
Now, I thought that was a really great point you brought up, the auditing of arrests and circumstances. Does that include going back and interviewing the suspect, interviewing witnesses by a supervisor to ensure that the facts as presented in the arrest report are the facts that occurred out there on the ground?
So they don't do their own independent investigation, but we do have body worn video, in-car cameras, and then city cameras that they can verify some of the statements that are made. So they do make attempts to again make sure that arrest is a valid arrest and audit in that way, if you will.
So they do go back on a selected basis and review body worn camera footage?
Yes, on a sample, not every arrest, but on a sample.
That's excellent, Chief. Chief Kaufman, the same question for you.
Yeah, one of the things that we make sure to do is we're constantly providing implicit bias training. We actually here in the South Bay, we bring in outside trainers. We have trained the trainers within our department. So we keep that stuff fresh and on the forefront so that we don't end up with a officer level, with bias ending up in additional arrests. The thing that I found that is really, really important is that you've got to place officers in their communities in front of the communities when there's not a problem. People need to see each other eye to eye before they're out, in the middle of a crisis or an issue making these arrests. It's very important to me that officers understand who their community is and that the community understands who the officers are to avoid these types of things. We too have lots of checks and balances in place. Everybody wears body worn cameras. And I recently, within the last 2 years, I guess, had to change the policy here at Redondo to a shall record rather than a should record. So that was not in place when I first got here, but I found it very necessary. And then one of the last checks and balances that we use is that every single call that is generated into the police department, we follow up actually with the victim or the caller. And that's done automatically and digitally. They receive a text message or an email that follows up with them after the call has occurred. And they're allowed to critique and survey and write anything they want about those incidents. So we're constantly seeing calls come in where someone wasn't happy and we're able to follow up on that, where generally we'd have to wait for some form of a complaint.
Okay, so this next question is a little tougher, gentlemen. On August 19th of 2021, a couple days ago, it was reported that 2 former South Bay police officers were separated in July and September of 2020 from their agency after an allegation and internal affairs investigation that they spray painted a swastika inside of a resident's car. The officers have been charged by the LA County DA with conspiracy and vandalism. They're presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. However, in a police organization, many are aware of the behavior and tendencies of rogue police officers, but the behavior is allowed to continue. First of all, are you aware that this phenomenon does still exist? And what can be done to change the code of silence as it relates to aberrant police officers? We'll start with you, Chief Kaufman.
Yeah, I think a lot's been done over the years for this this code of silence and being aware. Chief executives of police departments need to have the ability to discipline their employees. One of the things that's happened, I think, is that there are so many rights afforded through the Police Officers Bill of Rights Acts and unions and being sued. A lot of times people are not held accountable when they should be. So we're a big fan of that. You probably also know that the LA County Chiefs Association, we support the decertification of police officers. We want it done in a fair way, of course, but everybody wants the ability to be able to rid our organizations of any problem like this. I think that what we teach our young officers that come into the organizations is there is no code of silence. If someone is acting up, you better report it. And if you don't report it and you acquiesce to it, you're just as guilty. So you have to take swift action on those things and never let them foster within inside an agency.
But do you agree or disagree that officers that harbored the attitude such as these two South Bay police officers, that they're known by their peers and contemporaries for the attitudes that they evidence and that they're not reported at the line level?
Unfortunately, I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. And, it's like when, let's be honest, when we have an officer that that does something in an agency or something eventually happens. When we go back and look at that in hindsight, we've seen it all over the news. There's usually been clues everywhere. Sometimes those were acted on, sometimes those were not. I think it's the job of the chief executive to act on those things, whether they're held up in an appeals court or not. We have a duty to the public to rid our organizations of those kinds of attitudes. And so unfortunately, I would agree with you because we work with one another and people know.
Okay, Chief Rambo.
I echo some of the things that the chief mentioned before me. Also, mandated reporting in the policy is important, just like with EEO complaints. So when you have the code of silence occurring, what helps with that is a policy that indicates if the employee does not report that is also subject to discipline. And it really kind of alleviates the newer or the less tenured employee, because I would probably guess that these are older, more tenured folks, perhaps training officers who could influence whether or not they get off training, things like that. So having mandated reporting also helps, along with the implicit bias training and then constant training and vigilance on the part of supervision, paying attention to what's going on, and really sometimes just paying attention to the very small, subtle things like stickers on lockers, subtle jokes at briefing, and then as a supervisor, as a chief, letting folks know what you will and will not tolerate, and then also demonstrating and by leading by example. A combination of all these things really can have like incremental changes to overall culture.
Okay. Chief Saville, I'm going to change that question up a little bit to you. In the George Floyd incident, the officer that was charged was a 19-year veteran. He had about 16 complaints over that time. The chief of police had worked internal affairs. He was aware of his tendencies. Why do you think how is it possible that Chauvin was made a training officer with authority over line and new officers with that kind of a history?
Well, I believe at times that people overlook things based on, what their individual motivations are. And I think it's important to stress that, that type of activity, personally for me, I can only speak for me. I can't speak for Minneapolis, is that,
not asking you to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd have zero mercy for that. And I'm blessed because I am in a city that I have a great mayor, a great council, a great city manager who support the decisions I would make. And
that's the only reason they're great, because they support you, but go ahead.
Well, no, that they would support a decision that may incur liability because I would terminate somebody, but they know they would do the right thing. And so I don't know what the situation was in Minneapolis, But what I'm going to say is that, here in Gardena, that's not the case at all.
Chief Rambo, do you think that there were a number of people aware of Chauvin's tendencies before that fateful day?
Yeah, Mayor, and for the mayors on the and council members. So one of the things that happens in police culture is that what's celebrated and what's rewarded is the behavior you get. And so my guess is that he was rewarded and celebrated because he made a lot of arrests. He was a cop's cop, whatever that means. And when you celebrate these kinds of behaviors and then make him a training officer, he's only replicating that behavior, which again is celebrated. And so he just creates several versions of himself out there, which eventually over time permeates the entire department. And eventually these people promote. And so it just goes on and up through the ranks. And so you have to really pay attention to what you're celebrating out there and then really nip it in the bud in terms of who are the role models and who, what kind of behaviors you actually want to put forward.
Okay, Chief Kaufman, just if you take a couple minutes and tell me whether or not you think that by and large, the supervisory ranks and the line ranks were aware of Chauvin's attitudes, but he was allowed to be a training officer anyway. Why do you think that occurred?
Yeah, I just like the answer to my last question, I believe that people knew it. They work with them, they knew the tendencies. I think what we struggle with in law enforcement is that we try to develop all these rules. We've got these policy and procedure manuals that are 700 pages thick. You can't do this, you can't do that. And you have people with bad attitudes that skirt that policy just enough and they're not held accountable. And or maybe they were attempted to be held accountable, but they got by on some technicality because it wasn't really written. I see this happen all the time. And one of the points I'd like to make, kind of following up with a thing that Chief Rambo said, is that we kind of have a saying in our organization: if you permit it, you promote it. It's kind of the same thing that Cecil was saying about rewarding whether you know that you're doing it or not. If you permit something, you promote it, and you have to develop that culture. But I think the way to help combat it is to have the agency and especially the chief executive develop a vision. Because if you can't hold someone accountable to a policy, you can hold them accountable to a vision. That vision can include your culture, how you treat people, what your attitudes are towards the public. And that's what I use to not promote people. Hey, they may have a great track record, but we may know that they don't buy into the vision of community engagement, 100% treating with respect or whatever. And we can hold people accountable to that in their careers if that vision is spoken within the agency and it becomes part of our promotional process.
Okay, we're coming down to the last two questions. So this next one, give me about 2 minutes because the chairman has given me a time limit. So Chief Safel, have you experienced an increase or decrease in crime in your jurisdiction during the COVID era? And have you seen any correlations to crime and the pandemic?
The increase in property crimes, vehicle burglaries in my city is up about by 60% during that time. Auto theft was up as well as grand theft. Have a decrease in residential burglaries. And so that is what occurred during the pandemic. Now, whether the pandemic actually occurred or actually caused those things still remains to be seen.
Okay, Chief Rambo.
Yeah, we experienced a minor increase in property crime, but I can tell you specifically in dealing with our unhoused population in the airport, some of that has to do with the court system being shut down for almost a year. And so only the most serious cases were actually being, slow walked into and adjudicated. So with the court system being shut down, you had an increased impact on folks that would recidivate because they had just not been held accountable. But we also experienced a really dramatic decrease at the airport because the airport was pretty much shut down in terms of air traffic. And so we had a lot less volume and a lot less opportunities for pilferage and things like that. And then we took a much more aggressive stance on our unhoused population during the pandemic, and we brought that population down, which also impacted how much property crime actually occurred on the property. For those of you who don't know, at its peak, the airport has 51,000 employees on the property, and at its peak, we have 89 million passengers a year.
Chief Kaufman.
Yeah, for us, during the height of the COVID pandemic, we got to the point where calls for service were so low. I thought we were going to solve crime for a day. My goal was no Part 1 crimes in 24 hours. And I think we ended that day with 3. So we didn't quite get there. That drastically changed by the time the end of the year rolled around. And right now, as it sits today for 2021, we're looking at about a 25% increase in Part 1 crimes over 2020. So for us, it's going up. Property crimes, like Mike said, as well as burglaries, vehicle burglaries and stolen vehicles going through the roof.
Okay, Chief, so I gotta ask you something. So on an average PM watch shift, how many officers do you think you deploy?
I can go first.
Yeah.
We deploy about 7 on graveyard, and then we'll have a holdover of about 2 to 3 officers from swing shift, and trickle in a little bit of supervision.
Okay, and how many, what's the population in your town?
67,000.
So that's pretty bold to try and ensure there's not one single Part 1 crime. I got to get into your strategy book because that's sheer genius, all right? And I've run 3 police departments. I could never have a goal like that.
I'd never seen anything like it, but we were getting so close. It was interesting to even have that to track, but we started tracking it and I started touting it within the agency. I'm like, get out there, be visible. But a couple people got away with something.
Doggone it. Okay. Man, you maybe forgot what I asked. So we're on to our next question. I think you guys have all answered it. So now, does your city council set expectations for you regarding the core mission of the police department, or do you set their expectations of your department and their performance? And if so, how do you communicate, or how do they communicate that to you? Chief Saffello, did I make that clear enough?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so they set the vision and then I set the mission. And how do we communicate that? It's through daily communication about where we're at as a police department and where they see us going. And then I enact that.
Okay, Chief Kaufman.
Yeah, I think in my city, I feel like I have a lot of trust from the council, and they rely on me to set the expectations, which I enjoy. However, so I do set the vision at the police department, but we go through a strategic planning process and do a public strategic plan where the council has input on, hey, here are the things in public safety that we're all getting together and saying we would like you to work on. So they have a lot of input in some of the directions for projects that we're working on.
So, I found it to be that way in my tenure as being a chief a few times, that the council, because they're not policing experts, they look to be able to trust the chief to give them guidance on how a police department should be operated. But that's an awesome responsibility. And some chiefs don't live up to it. And they end up costing cities a lot of money. So how does a council, in your opinion, balance that? How do they know when a chief is leading them the wrong way?
I think there's got to be great communication between executive of police department, fire department, any department, and the council and city management. And if that communication goes away, they're not going to know. So how do they know? They know it through asking questions and relationships. They know it through the results they're seeing, and a lot of times they're gonna know stuff through the constituents that they're dealing with. But you're right, it is a tremendous amount of trust. I think it's up to the chief executive to bring to the council what the current trends are, what the best practices are. Let them know that you are looking out for the agency, the liability of the city. I heard it said recently, I want a chief executive that looks forward and even around the corner. And if they stop doing that, council should be asking questions. But yeah, it's a tough balance.
Okay, Chief Rambo, so you've had the experience in city management. You've been a commander in the sheriff's department. At what point is it the responsibility of the city council, mayors, to look deeper into the liability profile that a police agency incurs to take steps to oversee the conduct of a chief of police?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question, because I was going to chime in that on my city manager hat, it's incumbent for city managers to really understand and talk to their colleagues, understand as they see liability, they see citizens' complaints. You know, a police department is one department of many in a city, and they're going to need folks that can really take a look at their liability, the costs that they're incurring, the citizen complaints, the numbers of shootings, pursuits, all these things that cost the city money, and be able to convey that to the city council so the council can have some intelligent data to really make a judgment call on the performance of a chief of police. And then you can also, as a city manager, your council members can direct your city manager to give the chief of police, a strategic plan, have them come up with goals and achievements for those evaluation processes. And so the areas that you want to look at are like litigation, citizen complaints, call for response times, and crime, and lowering crime. So there's a number of categories that can be looked at by the city administrator to convey that to the council, and then have the city, the chief of police, or in my case, the chief, go before the Board of Airport Commissioners and talk about all of these issues in terms of the liability, crime rates, what we're doing about it, what the strategy is, strategic plan for the future, and those kinds of topics.
Okay. Mr. Chair, we're at 31 minutes, so would you like to open the panel?
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes for questions, Jim, and I know my colleagues are gonna have a lot of questions, so.
And that's what I'm saying, so we're ready to go for questions.
Yes, please, yeah.
Are there any questions from the members?
I have one.
I mean,
have
B
one.
always has a question, but go ahead.
Oh, B, go ahead, yeah.
I was being facetious. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll go. I think it was Chief Kaufman that mentioned that there's some things that get in the way. There's some hurdles for law enforcement to be able to get rid of the bad actors. So it sounds like your chief association is dealing with some of these things. What can we do? Is there legislation that needs to happen? Is it truly just union issues? And also, so that's the first part of the question. And the second part, which really should have been the first part, is, are there any stats nationally about how many bad actor police officers there are in agency? I'm sure it varies tremendously. I'm guessing the percentage is probably larger in bigger agencies, maybe a little bit more difficult to govern, but are there stats on how many bad actors, however you define that, how many there are in your typical police department? And then what can we do differently to allow police agencies to get rid of those people that are not living up to the values of the organization?
Yeah, so for your second question with the stats, I'm not really sure. I'm sure there are. I know there's been studies done. I don't have any of those in front of me. I think the number's actually pretty low. Bad actor number's pretty low, but I think law enforcement's under a microscope. We're like a plane wreck. When it's on video, everybody knows it, and we need to be held to account for that. We are held to a higher standard, and I think us as chiefs should hold our organizations to that. As far as what can you do, the legislation, what I've seen is that our state legislation, when it comes to putting rules in place that would decertify an officer or make it easier maybe to discipline, the two sides seem too far apart. And it's, everyone kind of agrees, oh yeah, we need to do this, but it seems hard to reach a middle ground. So I would just encourage open conversation. I like to have a good relationship with my assembly members and talk to them about these things and saying, listen, here's the sticky button. If you can come in, if you can get your constituents to come in or bend a bit on this issue. This is how we can get it passed. And just good communication with our legislative bodies is important.
Okay, Drew, I can't see raised hands, so you're gonna have to take over.
Yeah, I was gonna say past Chair Valentine. Olivia, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. So, so Chief Kaufman, thank you for that, for what you said about the community policing. I know you instituted the Coffee with a Cop in Hawthorne, and it was very successful. You said it's important for the community to see the police when there's no stressful situation, to actually see them as people. And I'm sure that Coffee with a Cop is one way of doing it. Are there other ways that you can describe for us how the police can interact with the community in a non-stressful situation, so that the police and the citizens can really get to know each other as people?
Yeah, I think, I think kind of like Cecil said, when we pick what we're going to reward people for, we need to make sure and reward good community interaction, just like we would reward arrests or, numbers of search warrant written or whatever. And so you want to create an environment where you're encouraging your officers to look at any way to break down barriers, open communications, and there are just so many. I mean, one of the things we found success with here in Redondo Beach is, what are some of the cultural things that happen in the city that we can connect on that level with the youth and skateboarding, or, promoting an event. Music is a big part of the South Bay. So we'll do a battle with the bands, and we'll put the police slightly into this where we're showing the community, hey, listen, we know that you covet music, and we're gonna help provide a stage and lights for you so that you can come out and perform. And we just want to be known. I want our officers to be known and be called, hey, those are my police officers. This is my police department, not that's the police. And so I think, you've got to look for avenues. I tell my cops here, it doesn't matter whether you're designing a police car or you're promoting someone to sergeant, you should be involving your community in that process. And when they feel the buy-in, then they're gonna feel a part of the organization. But you got to reward that good behavior.
Thanks, Chief. I see Chief Rambo would like to address it, and then we'll go to Council Member Obaji after that.
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, the goal is to really, as the leader, encourage your officers to be community engagement people, where they actually facilitate community engagement. One of the things we've done I've done in the past is a lot of people forget that libraries are really daycare centers for the poor. So we created a safe haven with our youth athletic league, with boxing, computer learning labs, tutors, and that was spearheaded by the line officers to engage with the community, engage with the youth. And so if they become community organizers, community facilitators for programs that are not just strictly police related, I think that goes a long way to building trust in the community between the cops and the community.
Okay, thank you. Past Chair Valentine, Councilmember Obaji.
Howdy. Sorry, y'all, I've been on video. I've packing for Santa Barbara Independent League of Cities meeting. But I wanted to ask the police chiefs, other than maybe Chief Kaufman, when the police forces are spread so thinly in populous cities, how do you respond to demands by the residents for traffic enforcement, especially when it seems like, traffic crimes are, as far as police officers can be concerned, sometimes the least severe or traffic infractions are low on the totem pole relative to more serious crimes that are occurring and affecting quality of life?
Hey, thanks for that question. So what we do in Gardena is that, we always say, if it's important to you, it's important to us. And one of the things we'll do is we have discretionary funds to be able to put out extra officers to do directed enforcement in those types of situations. But we also have the ability to have our sergeants involved in our district policing program, who can actually take officers off the shift and direct them just in that, whatever the particular issue that comes up. So there's, although we may be thin, there is an ability to get resources to direct towards those types of issues.
Thank you, Chief. And Chief Rambo?
Just very briefly to add to that, it also helps if you engage the community again and talk and put out PSAs about public safety in terms of traffic enforcement. Sometimes there's also multi-jurisdictional task forces that you can call upon to help, saturate an area to really address traffic issues and an ad hoc basis. So you have all these regions here, and maybe take it at a regional model in doing that. But I think community engagement, public service announcements, going to schools, and talking about safe driving and traffic issues, particularly with block clubs and that kind of thing, also goes a long way.
Yeah, I'd actually like to add one last thing to that. Cecil's absolutely right. I mean, when we come together as law enforcement, we have good relationships with our partners. We can really make an effect. The South Bay came to us last week, and we had all the motor officers from all the different divisions. They wrote 96 tickets in the matter of about 4 hours, and they can have a huge impact. One thing that is often not asked, and maybe the council should pay attention to this, look at the calls for service that your city has. How many do they have? For example, in Redondo, we've got about 65, 68,000 calls for service per year. Ask the question, how many of those are generated by your police officers? The health of your organization and how proactive people are is really, really important. So how do you address those things, Councilman Obaji? You got to have everybody rowing in stride, and it can't just be the 4 or 5 traffic cops. You got to try to get the patrol cops out there to kind of do traffic work. You don't want to have 2 community engagement officers. You want to have 100 of them. And so what are these guys and gals doing with their downtime? Look at your self-initiated activity and see how many calls are being generated in that way. And it's a good indicator.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Rambo, did you have another point? All right, hand slip. Okay. Well, we're a little over time. Mayor Butts, this was awesome. Thank you for doing this. And Chiefs, really good information. Loved it. Thank you for everything you're doing to keep our community safe. Please stay safe yourselves. And we're going to wrap this up. And thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we are on to item 8, transportation reports. Back to Jim. Mayor Butts, you're up for a Metro report, and Steve Lance.
Okay, well, we had no meeting this month. The big things on our agenda, we entered into a JPA with Metro and the city of Inglewood to go after federal transportation funds for major transit projects. And that's about it. We have asked for letters of support from the governor and to support the transit project. And I think you guys have a copy of a letter that we were asking the COG to send. And if you go over that at some point, I think it's attachment on page 51 or something like that.
It's the next item on the agenda.
Oh my goodness, well then let me be quiet. And a little side note, I just got a phone call from finance that the Balmer Group is deposited their $66 million to purchase the land on Century. And we will be dividing that up between the vast majority to go to the FAA and LAWA, and some will be left over for the city of Inglewood because of the appreciation. So the project will go through and construction will start in the beginning of September for the Clippers Arena.
Great. Wow, that's great. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
Big news, big news.
Before we go on to the next, I guess I do have something to add to the Metro report, if I can. The sub-regional directors yesterday all met with Stephanie Wiggins, the new CEO of Metro. And it turns out that a lot of us have been involved in this in a long time. So she's an old friend of a lot of the sub-regional directors. And we think so highly of her. And she only proved that out yesterday. She plans to meet with us quarterly. Unfortunately, the last CEO did not meet with the sub-regional directors at all. And so Stephanie has an open door for us. She wants to work with us. She's going to come up with a 3-year forecast on what Metro funds actually are. We said to her, just, sub-regions want to know the truth. Don't tell us you can do everything. Tell us what you can do, and let's all work together to get it done. And so it was we had an after meeting, and all the directors were very excited. We're really looking forward to working with her. So I just wanted to mention that.
Excellent. So Jackie, are you going to introduce the letter, talk about the letter, or is Mr. Lance?
I think Steve should probably do that.
Okay, Steve, to you.
I'm looking for, there it is. I got it. Perfect. Okay, this is a letter to Governor Newsom in which we support the inclusion of the Inglewood Transit Connector project in the governor's California Comeback Plan. We are seeking approval of this, I think, from the board tonight, so we can send it.
Yes.
And the governor's comeback plan is a multi-billion-dollar plan that includes transportation and other initiatives. One of the things that we noticed was that it didn't explicitly include the ITC, and we wanted it in there. So we put together the letter and in support of Inglewood, and it's ready for your approval.
Great. So we need a motion to approve.
Yes.
I just want to say, Jim, I remember the COG meeting, the Transportation Committee meeting, where also going to sign off in support of that. That was a while ago now. And we still fully support it.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Tanaka.
Okay, we have first and second. Any further discussion? No, let's go to a vote, please. Dave?
Any opposition to approving the letter? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right, we are on to item 9, COG program action items, reports and updates. Item A. Jackie, are you going to cover this one?
Yes, we have 2 contracts that, well, we actually are talking about 3 contracts, and none of them were able to go to the steering committee because they've all been done since the steering committee. That's why they're not on the consent calendar. So the first contract is on page 53. It's with Magellan Advisors. As you know, for the last 2 months, we've been going month to month with them because I wanted to, we're pretty much closing out a lot of the construction. We definitely need them for construction management work, but what we thought is we would narrow the scope of their contract and figure out what our next steps are and possibly do that with an RFP, which we might be coming to you with in the next month or 2. So I'd ask for your approval for Magellan Advisors. This is for 58, I think it's 58.50 a month. And it's, I'm sorry, I don't have the number in front of me. And it's less than we're currently paying. We've been going month to month at 6,000. Now we're going at 5,800 or 5,850. So I would ask your approval of that till June of 2022.
So Jackie, you're saying that I read 58,800, but that's amortized over
10 months. 10 months.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, B, you have a question?
Yes, it wasn't stated in the report. Is all of this money still coming out of the grant fund that we have for this project? And
Yes,
is there sufficient grant funds for this?
Yes, as a matter of fact, one of the reasons I wanted to narrow the contract is to make sure that this contract was solely from the grant funds. And we do have about $800,000 left. So there's money for that. And if we're going to do something else, I wanted it to be in some different contract.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, would someone like to make a motion?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. That was Butts and Armato. Okay, Dave, vote please.
Any opposition to approving the Magellan contract? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up is the website.
Right, the website redesign, we have extended it once, and this one is a contract that first of all, we're hoping to go live with the website sometime in September. I've seen some mock-ups. It looks like it's going to be really a very, very nice website. Kim, do you want to add anything at this point on the website?
Yes, this extension is a time extension only, not for additional funding. And it allows us to complete the content migration. There's a lot of content on our old website that we're moving over to our new website, and we're putting it in different order. So that's taking a little bit more time than we had anticipated. And the other thing that this gives us is the time to like a 30-day period, which is part of our current contract, so that we can work out any bugs. The current web designer stays with us for 30 days and make sure that it works fine and that there's no issues. And so this allows us both of those things.
Great. Someone like to make a motion unless there are any questions? or comments? Thank you, Mayor Buss. B, thank you. Councilmember Derringer or Mayor Derringer, sorry. Okay, David, vote please.
Sure. Any opposition to approving the JP marketing contract? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, David. All right, then we have the Sagecrest Planning and Environmental Services of the Regional Planner for the COG members.
Right.
Jackie?
We started a while ago to find a planner that we could hire. This is going to be paid for solely through the assessments that we've collected from you, and the person will be directed by me with the help of the community development directors. We were trying to find an employee, but we never got a qualified applicant. I asked the planning directors if they knew of firms that they had been happy with, and we were given the name of Sagecrest. Sagecrest recommended Jonathan Pacheco Bell. Mayor Derringer, you'll be glad to know that I did check with City of Hermosa Beach, who had nothing but good things to say about Sagecrest. They thought it was a wonderful firm. And then I also did reference checks on Jonathan Pacheco Bell, who actually is here and can introduce himself if he would like. And so we would like to start that contract. It's a 10-month contract right now. It would be having him work 20 hours a week, no more than 20 hours a week. And to do the projects that the community development directors are recommending, and also to oversee the SCAG projects.
Maybe we should ask, since Mr. Bell's on, if you wouldn't mind, maybe an overview of your background and relevant experience. Is that appropriate, Jackie?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I just want to make sure my mic is okay. You can all hear
Sound
me?
good. You sound
Wonderful.
great.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you this evening. My name is Jonathan Pacheco Bell with Sagecrest Planning and Environmental. I have 15 years of experience in Los Angeles County as a regional planner and as an urban planner. After graduating from UCLA Urban Planning, I started my career at LA County Department of Regional Planning, planning in the unincorporated areas, where I worked for 13 years. I was there 2006 to the start of the pandemic, around February 2020. In that time, I worked in all the different divisions, doing traditional planning work, long range plans and community plans, working on permits and things, but also doing land use regulation and enforcement, which allowed me to have my feet on the ground, being a planner on the ground. And I'm very proud to say I worked throughout your COG in the unincorporated areas, in all the unincorporated areas of Second District. And I also had occasions to interact with the neighboring cities. After the county, I went over to the nonprofit world. I worked at the LA Neighborhood Land Trust for about a year, developing parks and gardens in your COG and in other communities of color throughout Los Angeles County. After that, I decided that I wanted to continue my development as a planner and learn a little bit more about the private sector. So I made the move over to Sagecrest, where I joined in May of this year. So at Sagecrest, I'm doing a variety of things. Whatever they need, I'm doing, but it's really great to be able to have the opportunity to get back in the area that I worked in for so long in South LA and also in the South Bay. I'm also one of the directors of APA Los Angeles. I'm the social media director of the Los Angeles section. So I bring all of my connections and experience with APA to your COG. And that's how I've had many occasions to meet with and confer with staff in the various cities in your COG.
Impressive background. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have anyone have any questions for Mr. Pacheco Bell? Okay. Yes, Councilmember Cruikshank.
Thank
By
you,
the
Drew.
way, you know what I'm gonna say right now, I apologize. It's hard to keep up with mayor pro tem and council members for the cities that rotate. I'm just gonna say this right now. I apologize in advance. So please, if I don't call you by the right role, I apologize.
You could call me John. That's fine. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks,
So thank you for being here tonight. And obviously, all of us are going through our housing plans right now and wrapping those up. I guess from your perspective, what do you think your role is with the South Bay City Council of Government and our group? What do you believe your role is going to be?
Thank you for that, Councilmember Cruikshank. My role is going to be a resource for your COG. What I envision doing is being that expert, that resource, that go-to person that can address all of the needs that you're dealing with in your region, all of the specific regional needs that are within the South Bay. I know there's a lot happening right now with housing. There's a lot that's happening coming out of Sacramento that requires a lot of us to keep up with. There's a lot that is potential for funding. There's interactions with SCAG. There's potential interactions and partnerships with the federal government for funding and other things, especially with the infrastructure plan. So my role is to be your go-to. If you need something that has anything to do within the realm of planning, I'm your person. And just to get back to my experience, I did a lot of work in the housing realm when I was at regional planning, working on housing, the housing element update, community plans in South LA, and specific plans. And also I'm continuing that role in my time at Sagecrest, doing things for accessory dwelling unit updates and housing first policy updates for the city of Riverside County. So in conclusion, I'm going to be the person that is your go-to for all things planning.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Cruikshank. Most important question, where do you stand on SB 9? No, I'm just kidding.
We had a good chat about that when we spoke. I let Jackie know that it was a very, very cogent, very effective op-ed that I read in the LA Times. And I read the original letter, the longer version. So very well written, and so someone's got to say it, right? We have to have the positions out there.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's probably it from you for now. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate your input.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any further discussion before we go call for the vote? Okay, would someone like to make a motion to approve the contract with Sagecrest Planning?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? I don't think so. Doesn't look like it. Okay, Dave, vote please.
Any opposition to approving the Sagecrest contract? Any abstentions?
Abstention, City of Lawndale. Bernadette Suarez, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for all that. Okay, we're on to strategic planning session update. This will be brief. We had a strategic planning session. Cedric was there, Rodney was there, George was there, Zane was there, John was there, Christian was there, Stacy was there. Who did I miss? Jackie was there, Kim was there. I'm sure there was some, Olivia was there. Anyway.
Did you say Rodney?
I said Rodney.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great meeting and we got a lot done. And we did a cool assessment called Strength Finder. So we got to know each other better as a group of colleagues. But the real outcome was that we came up with 8 different focus areas, which we've now streamlined down to 7. Those focus areas are going to guide the COG for the next year. And we have different working groups working on those different focus areas. So Roddy and I, for example, are convening to talk about environmental. What do we want to get done environmentally within the COG? Because that remains an important focus area. And specifically, what's the SMART goal that we're going to associate with that focus area to measure whether or not we've been affected? Olivia, Cedric, and I met and we talked about, what was ours again, Olivia? Research and educating, ultimately, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so we came up with a SMART goal or 2 for that. So I think, Jackie, the timeline is that everybody gets those done. We collate them for the next steering committee meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes.
So more to come on that. Anyone that participated want to add anything?
Yeah, we just want to thank you for putting that together because that was a great day.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. That was a blast. And Rodney and I got to have a beer before
Yeah.
5 p.m. even.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, legislative visits and advocacy, county redistricting. Jackie, is this you?
Yeah, well, right now there's no, I mean, this is just an update and we don't have any, we're not doing anything yet. County redistricting is still in progress. This is a continuing item that I will bring up when we have something to say.
Okay, then we're on to Stacy, legislative committee.
Just an update that our inaugural meeting is scheduled for September 2nd at 4 p.m. Come one, come all.
Thank you, Councilmember Armato. Let's see, we're on to South Bay Fiber Network.
South Bay Fiber Network, we are completing work order 1, 2, and 3. I think the only one left out right now is we're still building the regional communications, and I think there's a little bit of work still on the Lundquist Center. We had a good discussion today about next steps, and there's going to be a lot more interesting things to come. We're reading the literature, we're involved in the regional efforts, and we want to move rapidly to try to bring a lot more to your communities and work on economic development strategies. So that's probably all I need to say now. You'll hear a lot more in the future.
And I just spoke to Councilmember Horvath, I think it was yesterday, and his work group is focused specifically on the South Bay Fiber Network and what the measurable outcomes will be for that area. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, homeless services.
Well, this is an exciting meeting for me. I want you all to know, not only do we now have a regional planner, but I can announce that we also have a senior project manager for homeless services. I'm very excited to announce that Ronson Chu, who is from, he currently works at LASA and is a Redondo Beach resident, excuse me, is going to be our senior project manager. Ronson, and Christian can talk about this, he used the word, which is exactly what Ronson is. He is passionate about homeless services. He has done incredible community events in Redondo Beach. He cares about this tremendously, and he is very data driven. He wants to find out who is homeless in the South Bay, why they're homeless, and then develop strategies. I think it's going to be incredibly exciting to have new eyes on our program. I mean, Grace did an incredible job, I'm not saying that, but to have a new look at our programs and what the cities are doing. And Ronson and his I should just say, when I called his references, the first thing people said to me was, you have to hire him, you have to hire him. So it was like, he has tremendous contacts. He starts September 7th, which is extremely important to us because you guys really all rose to the occasion. We put out a call for projects for all of our cities. We have $1.9 million, which sounds like an awful lot of money, between January of 2022 and June of 2023. And sure enough, we got $3.5 million of projects. So we've been reading them pretty much as lay people. And all I could tell is, boy, do we need somebody to get in there and help us. And we were supposed to be able to bring this to you in September. We are waiting for Ronson. We think it's really important, since this is going to direct what we're doing in the next year and a half, what our cities are doing. So we've extended the valuation period for the month of September. We've also decided, to be perfectly honest, you can give your cities a heads up, that our application process was not good, in that we don't have enough detail. We really need to understand these projects more than was in the application. So when Ronson comes on, and he's agreed to read the projects before he comes on, we're actually going to call your cities in and say, please explain more about your project, because we have a lot of critical decisions to make. As you can see, we have more than we can pay for. It will come back to our current thought is that we will go to the steering committee October 11th and the board October 28th. Then we will be working on contracts in November and December. We'll hopefully execute those contracts, and work can begin in January. So we're slipping it a month, but we should still be ready by January. We're very excited, and I can't wait for you all to meet Ronson. So that's the homeless report.
Excellent. Congratulations. We look forward to meeting him. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on to senior services, Jackie.
Yeah, senior services, I actually, well, one thing I do need to say, Ronson is not a gerontologist as Grace was, and he has agreed to work on the senior issues. There's obviously a lot of overlap between homeless people and seniors, but he is also going to have to come up to speed on what our senior services is doing because he will be in charge of that committee as well. But I don't have anything at this point. Britt, did you want to say anything?
Well, our next meeting is September 28th. We always meet that last Tuesday of the month. That's 9:30 to 11:30. And we're just continuing to encourage cities to promote our home share South Bay program through Silver Nest, which is matching senior homeowners with people who need a place to live. And we think it's a really great project and gives an opportunity for the people homeless or just people who would like to be matched up, and we've got a couple that seem to be really working out. We're also promoting the AARP network of age-friendly communities and hoping to get some funding so that we as a COG can be more involved in that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have forgotten something. I wanted to go back and Britt reminded me because she was talking about home share. Colleen Farrell, our communications manager, as you know, has done an incredible job, especially with the videos and everything that she's done. Well, she has now created a media kit for Home Share South Bay. And Colleen, I'd like you to talk about that and maybe even, oh, good, share your screen. This, Colleen, are you there?
Yes.
Please tell everybody what you've done and why you've done it.
So yes, we've created this social media kit, and it's actually a media kit. It has more than just social media content in it. But we would like you to be our partner and ambassador for this program. We've already gotten the word out to the communications folks within all of the cities that they are putting it out there through social media and newsletters and various other methods. But we'd like you to share these materials with your own personal, on your own personal profiles, social media profiles, and newsletters if you have them. So Jackie's going to be sending out all of the materials after the meeting, and what that includes is a flyer if you'd like to print that out and distribute it or include it in a newsletter. We also have the Home Share logo that's in the kit and some images that are suggested to go along with a print ready story that you can put into a newsletter. And we have created some social media posts that are formatted for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. One of them is a generic, just share an extra room with someone in need of housing. We also have a tip sheet for how to prepare to share your home. And then we have some of the benefits of home sharing. So we hope that you'll partner with us in sharing this content.
Incredible stuff, Colleen. You're going to send that out to us so we can post it on social media and all that?
Yeah, I'll send it out this evening.
Oh, thank you. And Councilmember Huff, thank you as well. Good stuff. And I was going to say the same thing, Jackie. Colleen, I had the pleasure of working with her in El Segundo. She did a quick video recording of Olivia, Christian, and myself, and you did a tremendous job. You're a pro. And it only took me one take. Apparently it took Christian like 33 takes. I'm sorry for that. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
You all did great.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Spot 8 working group. Councilmember Armato.
Stacy, are you there?
She might be. You want to pinch hit for her, Jackie?
Well, the meeting is still being set up. We still haven't gotten a meeting date. So, Stacy, here she is. Do you know SPA 8? Do we have a working?
Yeah, sorry guys. We have been trying to coordinate too many schedules and it keeps getting pushed off. I think this last surge has really put extra burden on beach cities who's heading up our working group. So we're just trying to work with them, get a new date put together. Once we get that on the calendar, we'll be off to the races. So hopefully we have a productive update at our next meeting.
Great, thank you. All right, September board meeting. I propose that we do it either hybrid or virtual. The reason I say that is one, the pandemic, what's been happening lately, but also probably many of you going to the league meeting in Sacramento, which appears to still be happening, and there is a conflict. So I think that we should do this virtually, Jackie.
Okay, okay.
Does anyone disagree?
This, unless the governor changes anything, this would be our last virtual meeting anyway,
Okay.
because the Brown Act will come back into effect September 30th or October 1st.
Looks like we have consensus there. Was it? Yeah, B, please.
Yeah, before we adjourn this section under other, I just wanted to tell everybody who may not be aware that unfortunately SB 9 was passed out of the assembly today by a 44-16 vote. So it's going to be headed to the Senate on as early as Monday, I think. And it's anticipated, because that's where Tony Atkins is the sponsor of the bill, that they're going to pass it on to the governor. So we really need to renew our opposition in the Senate. There's some real concerns, and I know Jeff Kiernan can address some of those as well. But personally, some of these exceptions, I listened to a lot of the floor session today, and there's a lot of legislators that have a misconception about how strong this public safety exception will be, and this amendment that makes requires a 3-year statement of intent, for somebody who buys a property to say, I intend at this moment to live there for 3 years, which is nothing, because people change their mind constantly. You can't prosecute somebody for perjury for that. And then the public safety exception reverts back to a section that applies only to affordable housing and emergency shelter. So it's not clear that it would have any impact whatsoever. And the league position, according to Jeff, is that it would be limited to something like a brownfield or some toxic dump site that cities would have to show. But to the extent we might be wanting to try to put into our housing elements, or at least do some studies to bolster such a safety exception, we would need to hire consultants, basically do a study about the density. For example, in our city, the fire situation, what kind of density would we still be able to get all of our residents evacuated safely based on the number of people in the city and the limited re-evacuation roads that we have. Stuff like that, I think it needs to be in place, because it's required under the bill, if it has any application, this already be pre-existing at the time somebody makes an application for a new development. So it's not something cities can engage in after the fact and take public hearings and find reasons why it would not be suitable, this development in their city. I
Mayor
just want to
Derringer,
put that
can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Why don't we ask Jackie to follow up, have staff follow up with members of it right here and see if they want to jump on a call in the next day or two. I would agree it's urgent. I was astonished. I spoke to a friend of mine who I support his campaign, Republican, out of the Central Valley, and he was going to vote yes. He abstained, fortunately, but he was like, he didn't even understand. It's unbelievable to me. So I agree. Would that be acceptable to you, B, for bringing it up this week? Okay, we'll have staff do that, please.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Okay, agency reports.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
I think you all agree that Mayor Derringer from Rolling Hills has done an excellent job on leadership in this area. And I think we all just greatly appreciate her efforts and the passion that she's shown in bringing this to the forefront of our residents.
Mr.
Indeed.
Chair,
Thank you.
I'm a little concerned about us jumping on a call if it's a quorum. We would have to be publicizing
Why
that.
don't maybe staff could just take less than a quorum then, and the people that are most passionate about it, that have been working closely on it, including Mayor Derringer.
We do have this, the legislative committee coming up next week, but you're saying you want to do it like right away.
Oh, well, how quickly is this going to the Senate?
I think Monday at the earliest.
Tuesday at the earliest, actually.
Is it Tuesday? Okay, thank you, Jeff.
When's the ledge committee meeting?
Thursday next week.
Probably before that, I would think.
Late, yeah.
Well, maybe we can get, I'll work with Stacy because we probably should use that committee as the core of who we would have on the meeting.
Okay. All right, agency
Thank you.
reports. Is there anything? Thank you. Anything on agency reports?
Not that, I don't have anything.
The only thing I'll say is SCAG did meet. I'm on the Emerging Technology Committee and we did meet today. We talked about 3 things. Cal State's doing a smart city survey and then Frank Zerinian reminded them that he had already done a lot of that. Hyperloop was on there as well as Verizon about 5G. Okay, we're on to any announcements? Christian, you're not allowed to make any. Just kidding. I'll make one. We have an art walk, Elskana Art Walk, shameless plug, Saturday, 3 to 9. It's amazing. In the past, it's been 3 Thursdays. This year, it's just 1, and we have live music, incredible art distributed throughout the businesses in downtown El Segundo. So if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it. And
What time is that? What time?
3
What
to
time?
9 p.m. 3 to 9 p.m. Olivia, text me if you're going to show up. I'd love to meet you.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. Any other announcements?
Well, I would just say Rolling Hills Estates is going to have its annual city celebration in September, Saturday, September 25, and there'll be pony rides and all kinds of fun things involving hay bales. So y'all come.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Brett. Okay, one last thing. It's good to see Councilmember Franklin here and also Councilmember Abaji. So,
And I think, Mr. Chair, I forgot, I don't know if he's still here, but Jack Walzer is our brand new councilman in Torrance, and he was here. I don't know if he still is.
awesome. Okay, I think he peeled off. Sorry,
Yeah.
as soon as I started speaking. Okay, for the record, 13 minutes and there were 50 people on the call. So 13 minutes times 50, do the math. That's what I just saved you guys. Have a great evening. Just kidding. Trying to beat Christian's record. Bye, everybody. Have a
Bye,
great night.
guys.
Good night.
Thanks. Talk to you later, Drew.